I'm Andy Smith, Chair of the Oconee County Conservation Bank, calling this February 25th, 2020 meeting of the Bank Board to order. We have President Laura Havrin, Fran Runlett, Andy Smith, Emily Hitchcock, and Ryan Keese. We've got a quorum. And first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second it.
Okay, any discussion about the minutes? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Minutes passed by unanimously. Second thing on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Frank Abels, our treasurer, is not here, so I'm going to ask our vice chair, Fran, to give the treasurer's report.
Oh, I don't have it.
There you go. There. Start on this.
The opening balance is $15,180. Deposits are $58,000. Total deposits are and $500. Beginning balance and total deposits are $73,000. Expenditures are wire fees, $15. Cliffs Timber Project, $1210, $58,000. Fee for official clerk, $5. Balance in account, $15,660.
Okay. And that's in the Community First account for December. We'll make it now. And then do this one for January, for Community First.
For January, period ending January 31st. Month opening balance is $15,660. Deposits are $0. Expenditures are $0. Balance in account is $15,660. December 31st, period ending, balance $596, $199.47. Expenditures are $58,000 to Cliffs Timber Project. Reinvestments are $851.12. Balance in account is $539.59. Local government investment pool, $59,000. Period ending January 31st. $539,050.59. Expenditures $0. Reinvestments are $827.98. Balance in account is $539,878.
Very good. Thank you, Fran. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Do we have
I second.
any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. The next thing on the agenda is election of officers. We will elect officers now, and those officers will begin serving after the election. So we can take motions for the individual offices or motions across the board.
Well, I'll make a motion that I'll nominate Andy Smith to be chair. Continue. So.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
We all second?
Well, any other nominations for chair? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So unanimously, I'll serve as chair again. Vice chair, do we have a nomination?
I nominate Emily Hitchcock.
Okay.
If she accepts.
I'll second it.
She nodded no, though. That's not normal, the body language in sales that you look for.
Do you want to
Okay.
discuss this, Emily?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Secretary? Do we have a motion for secretary? Or volunteer?
Can we get a definition of what the secretary does?
Nothing, that's what I was. Has to sign on the, bank account.
I think I can do that.
Okay, I move, I nominate Ryan.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Treasurer. Current treasurer is Frank Abels. Do we have a motion for treasurer?
I nominate Laura, if she accepts.
My husband will laugh at you. Don't put that in the record.
That's off the record.
Do we have a second on that
Yes,
motion?
we have a second.
Do you accept?
Yes.
And we have a second. Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries unanimously. So our new officers are Chair Andy Smith, Vice Chair Emily Hitchcock, Secretary Ryan Keese, and Treasurer Laura Havren. Ryan, you will have to go down to the bank to become a signatory on that.
Okay, community first?
That's correct. And
In Walhalla.
that's all he has to do. He doesn't.
Yeah.
I don't have to go with him or anybody else. He can.
He'll
go.
have to have something authorizing him.
Yeah.
I'll have to.
Do I have to go
Yeah.
too and sign or no?
No,
No.
no.
Okay.
So the two signatories are the chair
Okay.
and the secretary.
In other words, you guys will keep me in line.
Okay.
We'll keep you in line.
All
You'll
right.
keep us in line as well.
So Katie will prepare the letter or whatever you need, because not anybody can just walk in and say, hey,
Yeah.
put me on the account. And then,
Yeah, just tell me who to ask for and I can.
Okay, so next thing on
I
the.
think, didn't
okay,
you
go
take
ahead.
us down last time? Yeah.
And I don't know because there's new.
I'll be happy to go with Ryan if need be.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, you may have to end up going down there
That's-
again and signing anyway.
Okay, all right.
So we can do it after this meeting if you want to, that's fine, if you guys got time. It'll take me just a few minutes to prepare the letter, but,
Okay,
and then I think I have to get down there with you.
It depends on when we get done, but I'm good until about 10:30, 10:40.
Well, it depends on how long the meeting runs.
Yeah.
okay. Same for me. Sounds good. Moving on, the next thing on the agenda is the 2020 meetings. You'll see on your agenda, there's a list of meetings. The thing in my mind to keep in mind is that we have the three application cycles, April 1st, August 1st, and November 1st. And this meeting schedule makes it so that we'll have a meeting soon after the application schedule closes, and then we'll have a second meeting to make our decisions on applications within the 60-day ordinance window that we have to make decisions after the application cycle ends. So all of these meetings fit that bill by their dates. Do we have a motion to approve these meeting dates?
So moved?
Do we have a second?
Second it.
Okay, any discussion on these?
Yes, I just want to say, I know right now I can't make two of them,
And which are those?
April 21st and August 18th.
Okay.
April 21st, I know I'm out of town. August 18, I'm out of town. I have been out of town every year since I retired, and I anticipate I would be again.
Okay. We appreciate that information.
I know.
I'm not that organized. I'm like,
Well,
Any other
you
discussion?
know, hunting season and,
Any other
Understand.
discussion on these meeting dates?
I won't be here.
Huh?
I won't be here, except possibly for the April one. Possibly.
You want to be here or will be?
I will not.
Okay, so I'll just bring up, if I may, that you're planning to move to Asheville. And so one of the requirements of the ordinance
Hendersonville.
is that to Hendersonville, is that the board members have to live primary residence in Oconee County.
Okay.
So you'll have to, when you make that decision or make that move, I think you would have to resign from the board and inform your,
I have to have a resignation letter from you.
okay,
Inform
all right.
Katie? Yeah, by-
From you,
by
yes, you
resignation
have to send it to me, you can just do it by email, it's fine, And, I just have to have that, whenever you do decide to resign. I just gotta have that so I can have it in my files. And then I will, let, council know, because I think you're an at-large member. So I can just let council know, and it doesn't have to be in one specific district. It can be, I don't have to be in all five. So.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kate.
I thought you weren't allowed to move until your term was up.
Any more discussion on the meetings? Did we already we vote on these? No, we hadn't voted on these.
No.
Any other discussion on the meetings? Dates? Okay, all in favors? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We're at discussion items. Continued discussion regarding alternative funding sources. Does anyone have anything to report in that regard?
I haven't met with anybody or presented as we had talked about.
Okay.
I'm going to meet with the Kioway Cares Committee, I think is their formal name. It may be different. But anyway, within Kioway Key, they like to track not only volunteer time with organizations, but monetary donations. And they ask to be part of their group so that you might get additional funding from them, additional grants. They ask that an organization like our board would, if there was a donation from a Kioway Key member to OCCB, they would ask that they be notified so that they can use it to apply for additional funding and grants. So anyway, I'm going to talk with them and, hopefully make a presentation to them sometime here.
How much will they expect in?
You know what?
Donation.
It could be $5, it could be $5,000, $50,000. There's no limit. It's just that they ask that we cooperate and would notify them if we had a Kioway Key resident. And what we've been doing is asking Kioway Key residents when they make a donation to note on the donation that they are a resident, so that that organization has made a commitment to get back to them and let them know. So,
Are you a resident?
yes,
Oh.
I am.
And that was my question, was how would we know? But
It should be, like, if somebody wrote a check to the OCCB, they would put on the memo line
Yeah.
that they're a Kioway Key resident, and then, somebody, whoever cashes the check, deposits it, would then notify Kioway Key of that. And so a system would be put in place to let them know.
yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
As long as, so that answered it. Thank you.
I move that my donation of $200 or $200 be sent to Kioway Key for a donation.
That's not the way it works. No, it has to be from a Kioway Key resident.
Well, from you.
It could be from anybody.
Oh.
But your donation is still your donation.
Okay.
So don't worry about that.
Yeah, you don't have to go through that.
No.
Okay. Any other reports on alternate funding sources? Okay. Next on the agenda is report from the Ordinance Committee. So that was myself, Fran, and Emily. We went through the ordinance and made recommendations for changes, talked about language, etc. Took that to David Root, County Attorney, had a meeting with him. He gave us his perspective on our recommendations and kind of led us in what kind of format we needed to put that in. And that's what we've done. And so what we are presenting as the Ordinance Committee, and is in your backup materials, it's on your desk, is changes to the ordinance. And what I would like to do, if we could, is go through these as quickly as possible and have a decision, take action on whether or not we want to, and which of these, if not all, we want to present to the council for amendment of the ordinance. Okay, so everybody has their handout, which starts with Division 9 County Conservation Bank. This one here. That one right there. Okay, everybody have that? Okay, and so on the first page, you don't see anything different there. So there's no suggestions there. On the second page, you see the first change, and that is going to be in section 2-400. It would be the addition of a new F.
It's the stuff in blue ink.
So they're going to be underlines and strike-throughs there. So the stuff in blue ink is recommended new language, and this is: the board shall report to council any member who misses 3 consecutive meetings or a majority of meetings for any year. It's the issue of attendance at meetings. There's a board ordinance of the county that requires, if any board member of any board misses 3 meetings, I think it's 3 consecutive meetings, the chair of that board is required to report that to the county council, and the county council takes action. So this reiterates that and adds the component of a majority of the meetings in a year. So it's not just missing consecutive meetings, it's also missing the majority of the meetings. And so right now,
Should we be taking out consecutive? If it's not just consecutive?
no, what we are suggesting is to add that as another component. So, and let me, the board ordinance says a member who is absent from 3 consecutive meetings without adequate excuse, such as documented illness, shall be reported by the chair of that board to the council and is subject to replacement.
Okay.
So we are reiterating that in this and adding the component, or a majority of meetings per year.
Got it.
Okay.
How about the section on without an acceptable excuse, such as sickness?
That's, okay, and your point would be to add that in here without and that's a good idea. And I think, and Katie, tell me what you think, that we should probably vote on each one of these as we go along. I mean, that's the only way that really makes sense. It'd be hard to vote on the whole thing at once, because maybe thumbs up or thumbs down on this.
However y'all wanna do it.
Okay, so,
If I may ask, if you are going to make an addition or whatever you're gonna do, if you will just say it so that I get it exactly like you want it.
okay,
So that so I'll put that in the minutes, but I wanna get it exactly like you say.
okay. Okay. Be careful what you say. Very good. So, the motion, and I'll make it then, is that there will be a new 2-400F that says, let me coordinate it with that, okay. Okay, the board shall report to council any member who, without adequate excuse, such as documented illness, misses 3 consecutive meetings or a majority of meetings for any year.
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Did you get that okay, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so the next suggested change is in section 2-402. It's adding in blue a last sentence to that section. And this is about the OCCB fund, and the sentence reads, "The OCCB fund shall be used only for the purposes set forth herein, period. Funds donated to the OCCB by third parties shall not be redirected by council." Do we have a motion?
So move.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay? So that's just as it reads, Katie. The next suggestion is in section 2-403, and that would be in sub 5, adding the language in blue, so that the sentence will read, extent of active farming on the property and extent proposed to be kept as wooded land or farmland. Do we have a motion on that?
I'll move that we accept that.
Okay,
I just want to ask, why are we clarifying that, though?
let's do a second on it and then discuss.
Second.
A second.
Okay.
All right, discussion on that. This was a suggestion, I think, from Fran. And so I think it came up that we think that that would be, so it's currently in its, it's currently wooded, farmed, whatever it
Somebody could cut the
is.
timber.
Huh?
Somebody could cut the timber.
That's right, and that's not prohibited, cutting timber, when you have a conservation easement. But I think the point is that if they, in their proposal, say, we're gonna leave it as this or whatever, that would enhance their
Wouldn't that already
application.
be in the easement, though, the easement language? I mean,
Well, of course, we don't read the easements. We don't get a copy of the easements, so we don't know what the easements say.
okay.
But you're right, if that was the
kind of a
proposed
preemptive.
purpose, it would be in the easement.
Okay.
And we're basically saying that, we like the way this looks, and if your proposal also says, we're gonna keep it wooded, that's something that we think would
Well, I mean, I read
enhance.
the easement for the Brasstown property, and I mean, everything is spelled out to
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sure y'all have probably seen some too, but.
Yeah.
I
And
was,
so we're just talking about the application stage.
okay, gotcha.
But
criteria.
not, but not all easements are exactly alike.
right.
And that's the reason I said we don't actually see what was negotiated between this landowner
Okay.
and whoever's gonna hold the easement. So we have to rely on whatever the proposal is.
Okay, it makes sense. I didn't understand it first.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay. The next is sub 7 in the same section, scenic view from property or preservation of general scenic nature of that part of the county. That's what's being added, or preservation of general scenic nature of that part of the county.
Move adopt.
Okay,
Second.
okay. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the next is in the same section, sub 12, to be added, saying potential impact on water quality in wetlands or water bodies not on the property. I'll move that one. We have a second?
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, and the discussion on this was that we didn't see a provision in here that dealt with the potential for the property to have a negative or positive impact on water bodies not on the property. So we're looking at the values on the property itself, but we could also consider, wow, if this gets a conservation easement and it's on Whetstone Creek, we could see water quality improving in Whetstone Creek, improving in Chattooga River, that sort of thing. Any more discussion on this one? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So now we go to section 2-404 in sub A2. All right. Okay, so this is dealing with that part of the process where the applicant notifies contiguous landowners that they are applying for a grant to get a conservation easement or conservation deed on the property. And what we are doing is trying to put a timeline on when those contiguous landowners could respond. And so what I would envision is that, and I'm sorry, I'll move on this language. Within 30 days of receipt of said notice, contiguous landowners or other interested parties may submit in writing to the board their views in support or in opposition to the application. Do we have a second on that?
Second.
So I'll go back to my discussion on that, that it's just not open-ended that the landowners do it, so, the process doesn't get derailed down the road after a lot of work has been done. And I think what should happen with this is that when the applicant sends the letter or notice to those landowners, the applicant should also say, you have 30 days to respond, should be in that notice is given. But that's where this is coming from.
So if they don't respond,
Then we
that
don't
means they
have
consent,
to do it.
that they have no
That
disagreement.
they don't have, that they don't have an objection that they're
To it.
gonna raise for us.
Okay.
So the neighboring landowner is voicing whether they would approve or disapprove, or?
They don't get to approve or
That's what I'm-
disapprove. All they can do is, if for
Weigh
some
in.
reason the neighboring landowner doesn't like what's going on, they can come in and tell us.
Yeah.
But they have 30
This
days
just lets
to do
them
it.
know this is
You
gonna
have a voice.
happen. You have a voice.
Okay.
And let me just ask an applicant, Mr. Eddie Martin, what do you think about this provision?
I think 30 days is too much. I think 14 days would be better.
So you're not
That gets them
opposed,
off- That gets them off the impetus of standing there and continuing the process. You've got 14 days to make a response. I think that would be adequate if they had an idea that they wanted to respond at all. I think it's a good idea, that there is a time frame to do so.
all right,
Does
thank
that
you.
answer your question?
It does, absolutely.
Yeah, the process is already long enough.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess my response is, I like giving them, plenty of time, but having a limit on it.
and 30 days is well within our 60 days to make the decision. That is my primary goal, is if somebody has something they think we should know, whatever it is, I want them, I want the board to have received the comments in a timely manner.
And we're
And
not
so
always
even
gonna be
if the
dealing with a local,
Entity.
resident person sitting at their house. I mean, this
Right.
could be an out-of-state person that travels or company or, really know.
So it doesn't add any timeline to our schedule of reviewing. It fits
Yeah.
within that.
Yeah, even if the notice is given on the day they file the application with us, it's probably gonna have been given in prior to that, right? But even if it's not given until the day they file, I think it has to be given prior to filing the application. So, the notice does, if I'm remembering correctly. Yes, within 5 business days of the submittal of the application, they have to, so that's, 35 days, that's well within our 60-day window.
Well,
But
here's
does
a concern too. We want to get that opinion of that contiguous landowner before we go to our second meeting, when we make our decision. So it may be better to say 21 days, just to make sure that we don't run afoul of our schedule. I mean, it's going to be, that second meeting will generally be more than 30 days out, but it would trip us up if it ever wasn't. So I would amend mine to say 21 days.
Is that better? Yes?
I go with the 30 days.
Well, I really hadn't thought about people traveling or out-of-state people, but that's a good point, Andy. I'm looking at April 1, May 19, just the next year, August 18, 15, and November. Yeah, right now, the second meeting is running 45 to 50 days in the next year's schedule. But of course, that doesn't have to be that way.
Okay,
So I see your point.
well, I didn't get a second on my motion to change it, so we're going to leave it as is. All in favor of within 30 days? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Moving right along.
Yes, I oppose.
In the same section, 2-404, we are in A sub 6. So it's the last sentence in that will now read, "The board shall require an eligible OCCB recipient acquiring fee title to land to place a conservation easement on such property or include language in the deed to ensure that the property is permanently protected." period. Do we have a motion on that?
I so move.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next is sub 7. No, I'm sorry, a new,
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, did everybody vote? I can't.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Just wanna make sure.
sub 8, a new sub 8 in that same A section of 2-0404, which would read, "The board shall establish reasonable procedures and requirements to ensure that the personal information of eligible OCCB recipients and property owners is protected as permitted by the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act," period. Do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and same section, sub B, sub 3.
Andy?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I interject before we get to sub 3?
Sure.
Okay, this, I'm interjecting because I want to say something about subsection 1, which the committee decided not to change.
Okay.
I am obviously the minority report here on that subsection. That is the section that says we have 3 review periods a year. And I had proposed that we change it to 2. I know the State Conservation Board only has 2. I think 2 is more than enough. And wait a second. And we have lots of other business we need to do, and on the days that we get, when we have a big application, our meetings get so long, we don't get anything else done. So that's my kind of reason for doing that, and then I had proposed some dates, specifically looking at trying to avoid having either board members or applicants having to deal with holiday, for example. The November 1st one means that we're all looking at things and trying to schedule the 2 meetings during 2 holidays. And and then that means the applicants also have to, show up for, but that was kind of secondary in terms of if we were going to change them, how we would decide what the 2 dates were. But I just wanted to throw that out, and I guess I'm making a motion as we're
What's your
going
motion?
through. I'm making a motion that we change it to 2 dates, and, I don't remember what the dates I proposed were. I think they were March 15, and whatever 6 months later is August 15, I think. So I will make that motion, and if there's not a second,
Well, I'm.
Do we have a second?
Well, I'm confused.
I
I don't
have
know.
a second first before discussion.
Go ahead.
I second it.
Okay.
Okay, Fran, second, discuss, yeah. go
Okay,
ahead.
so your thought is going from 3 to 2, because it will keep our meetings,
because it will
efficient?
give us, if we're going to have, right now, almost all of our meetings are going to be involved with review process, and it makes it hard for us to do things like this. And we have a lot of that kind of work. We need to review our review forms, we need to establish a policy, go through and get our policy manual, or whatever you want to call it, established. So I think we kind of have some work that needs to be done that takes time. And if we have only 2, and I think 2 is enough, I mean, that's what the state board does. But whatever it is, as long as the applicants know, I feel like they can plan for it.
So would that change our meeting schedule?
Yeah.
And make fewer meetings?
that's kind of what I was wondering. I
And
guess that
so
is.
fewer meetings, because didn't we go to more meetings to accommodate better the applications coming in?
I think it has always had 6 meetings, and now we have 7 per year. So I think we only added 1 meeting, but our meeting schedule, instead of just being consistently every other month, it is kind of bunched up around the
holidays.
the holidays. And of course, we would not change the meeting schedule now, because unless the council approves this, we are complying with the current one. We would have to look at whether or not we needed to change the meeting schedule after it was effective, if council accepted all of this proposal. But yes, I think it would affect when we scheduled meetings.
The ordinance requires us to have,
In the future.
to meet 3 times
Three
per
times,
year.
yeah.
That's our minimum. And we didn't establish this number of meetings. It was already established before, at least I came on the board.
Yeah.
You, and
I think
Ryan
before the
as well.
current board was here, it was weren't they scheduling every other month?
Yeah, like every other month, yeah.
And then, and then we had to make a lot of changes last year to accommodate the policy that we have 2 meetings after each review deadline within that 60 days. And then I guess Katie set it up to be consistent with that, since that's our policy.
So if we went from 3 to 2 meetings, how does that impact somebody like you, Eddie?
Or deadlines.
Or deadlines? What
Yeah,
does that do
review-
to applicants?
Review periods.
Mr. Martin, if you don't mind going to the podium just so we can hear you.
Let's make this official. Eddie Martin with the Oconee Soil and Water Conservation District. From that standpoint, the only thing that I see that might be a detriment would be the timelines of matching up for matching funds and things. That's still been, from our standpoint, a problem for getting matching funds. This cycle has actually worked out good for me on the current application that I'm doing. I just got back from the South Carolina Conservation Bank where they awarded us some funds, so we have matching funds to come to you guys now instead of in reverse. I think that the possibility of having 3 application days would be good for applicants as opposed to just the 2, because we're already working with a 2 deadline from the state standpoint. That way we could line up things and say, okay, we've got this application in good here. We can either go to y'all or go to the state bank first, and then we'll have a secondary opportunity to come in. And the more opportunities that we would have, it'd be better beneficial from the standpoint of applicants to me.
It makes sense, because if you think about it, we're kind of we're keeping it a little more expanded to possibly bring in more property owners with applications.
And we're here, I think, to serve the applicants.
I thought that, because I was at the board meeting, I thought that it was one where you already had a grant from us. Wasn't it the Laws?
This is a different Lyle.
Oh, okay.
This is Gary Lyles.
Okay,
The Lyle property that has already been sanctioned by you guys is one in Mountain Rest.
okay.
And that's from Mac Stone and Natural Land Trust.
Okay.
We did not have anything to do with that one.
Did the state bank give you money for matching funds?
They gave us funds that we requested as part of the package. Now, I'm going to come to you guys for the remainder of it, or what you will match, the 10%. That way, we got it down to the funding threshold that the landowner was asking for. And he came back to us when he originally asked for more. We were looking at 50% of the conservation easement value to start with, because that's generally how we had done it prior with the state bank. They've made some adjustments, and they're looking at 33 to 40% as opposed to 50, which they had done for us in the past. So we had to make those adjustments there. And
Well, does the landowner go to the state bank? And does the state bank, say we already gave money to the local bank?
The state bank doesn't.
Let's just stay on the
Yeah.
issue of dates and application
Right.
cycle.
I apologize for asking
All right.
that question.
All right.
okay,
Thanks, Eddie.
yes, sir.
From my opinion, from my point of view, we've never, so the other board changed it to one cycle, and we changed it back to the ordinance cycle, and we've really just started the funding business. I would say, let's just try it as it is. And I do like the aspect of creating as many opportunities as possible for applicants. So that's my opinion on it.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Okay, take the
Do we
vote.
need to vote?
Yes.
I will call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
No,
any opposed?
The vote, wait a
The
second,
vote.
folks. The vote was for the change. The motion was for
Oh,
the
that's right.
change.
So-
So I'm the only one voting for
For
it.
it.
That's an important.
All opposed? I am opposed. Okay, so motion fails. Good discussion, Emily. Sorry I skipped over that. So now we are on section 2-404,
Three.
sub B, sub 3.
Oh.
I got it. I got it. And so the change here is that the board shall evaluate each application and submit recommendations to county council within 90 days of each application deadline referred to in subsection B1, period. So we're changing the 60-day requirement of us going to county council to 90 days. And that does extend the time period of the application. And looking at,
Before we discuss, do we need?
let's have a motion on that.
I so move.
Okay, second,
Second.
okay, discussion on that. I guess we suggested this as sort of a safeguard to make sure we had enough time to do it, but with our given schedules, we're gonna have an application date, we're gonna have a first meeting within 2 or 3 weeks to talk about the applications, to acknowledge them, and then we're gonna have a meeting before that end of that current 60-day period to make our decision. And then we'll have some window of time on the back end of that to make our formal recommendation to the county council through our report. So the likelihood of failure of meeting that timeline, the current timeline, is maybe small, and maybe it's not a good idea that we add 30 days to our grant application process. So I'm saying now, I'd probably vote against this recommendation, even though I think I made it.
You did. And we have a motion in a second, right?
That's
So-
correct.
I will just say that I think, given the difficulty we sometimes have with quorums, that giving us that 90 days gives us the opportunity, for example, right now, we've got everything scheduled within the 60 days, but if something happens on that critical final one, then that just gives us an extra few days.
That's correct, but if you look at the schedule, like after the April 1st cycle, the second meeting's May 19th, the next meeting's August 18th, that wouldn't be within the 90 days.
No, but what I'm saying is if the May 19th date, we didn't have a quorum, and it had to be
call another special meeting.
it had to be rescheduled, and Katie's trying to get it before the end of May by having another 30 days, that would give her until the end of June to corral a quorum. So even though I, at the time, didn't make that suggestion, having watched her try to get quorums, I have decided that maybe.
Look at today's meeting.
It gives us more
Look at how many
flexibility.
times we had to try for today's meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. mhm.
Any more
That's what made
discussion
me
on
think
this
No.
proposal?
I think it extends the time frame and gives us more flexibility.
I have a little information on the typo. The 60 days, the 96, it looks like 960.
Yeah, it's just because you can't see the strike through that 6.
Yeah, it's
So
90
the
days.
6 is being killed, 90 is being added. It just doesn't show up. Any more discussion on this? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
I'll go along with the aye there. Okay. So we're now in sub 4. And so the first sentence will be, in recommending the awarding of a grant from the OCCB fund The board shall set forth findings that indicate the items below. The board may delegate to one of its members this duty to write a report summarizing the board's finding. So originally, we look at these.
So moved. I move.
Thank you.
Motion.
Second.
Second. Sorry about that.
That's okay. We'll keep you in line, Andy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just not too much in line. So we've got a report on these items. Our ordinance requires that. But what we're doing here is given the authority that we don't have to have another meeting to approve a report that's not drawn up at the meeting that we approve an application. We can delegate to one of our members, okay, write the report with our findings and give it to the board. That's all we're trying to do. Any more discussion?
Sounds good.
All in favor? Aye? Aye. Okay. Still in sub B of 2-404, now we're in 6. Two things are happening in this, and I'll just read it and we'll get a motion. The board may only authorize grants to purchase interest in land at or below fair market value pursuant to a current, parentheses, within 12 months of grant approval by county council, in parentheses, independent certified appraisal, period. So we're changing that from 3 months to 12 and continuing. The board may accept a market analysis update covering the time period from the date of the original appraisal to the present in the form of a letter prepared and signed by the original appraiser, period. Said market analysis update letter must be submitted to the board no later than 30 days prior to the next scheduled board meeting. So, we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second?
I second.
Okay. So you see why we're trying to do that. Change it from the 3 months that doesn't work to the maximum that we can do of 12 months. And also giving us the ability to take that market analysis update, but not requiring us to accept one. We would use our judgment on that, et cetera. Any discussion on that?
I think we should vote on the 12 and the rest of it separately.
Are you thinking that you will vote differently on the two different issues? I'm not either. I don't think anybody is, so I think one vote
Let's just do one.
would work.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So now we're in 2-0404C2. And the language will be changing the first sentence. If the board recommends the application in whole or in part and the recommendation is approved by county council in accordance with subsection B5, the eligible OCCB recipient and the owner of the interest in land identified in the application shall have a period of 4 months from the date of the county council's approval to decide whether to accept the award, period. We struck the phrase, close the transaction, because that seems to me to, well, that's discussion, I'm sorry. So with the second sentence that we're adding, within 14 days of acceptance of the grant award, the eligible OCCB recipient shall execute and record a grant agreement or memorandum thereof, which shall be in a form approved by the board, period. Said grant agreement shall include provisions for the indemnification and reimbursement of the OCCB for improperly used OCCB funds, comma, perpetual monitoring and enforcement, comma, and other actions pursuant to section 2-405. Do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion, we struck that first phrase, close the transaction, because that sounds like the closing, which does not happen within that 4-month period, so we just struck that. The decision is to whether accept the award. We think that it would be a good idea to have a grant agreement with our applicants, and we are mimicking the State Conservation Board with that, and I'm going to just hand out to everybody If you would pass that to Laura, and here's one for you, friend. This is a copy of the grant agreement form that the South Carolina Conservation Bank Board uses. We're not going to look at that now. This is just for you to have in your files. It'll be put in the backup of this meeting, and we will discuss this in the future. The point being that there's a formal contractual agreement between us, the funding entity, and the entity that gets the award that sets out certain parameters for the grant. And that will be a recorded document, or at least a memorandum of that document will be recorded. So it'll be legally binding, and it will run with the land. It'll be on the public record. And we wanted to include these things: indemnification and reimbursement of the OCCB for improperly used OCCB funds, et cetera, so that to reflect what was originally in the ordinance of indemnifying the OCCB in the title insurance policy, which is actually something that can occur. You can't be indemnified through the title insurance policy. You can't be a named insured. It's between the title insurance company and the owner of the land. It doesn't apply to other entities.
You sound like an attorney.
Yeah, that's a problem. So that's the purpose of this.
And Andy, I don't want us to do it right now because I know we have a motion on the table, but I would just like to put a pin in the grant agreement and whether or not it would be appropriate to have a subcommittee looking at that, just because I have looked at it. And the South Carolina Bank Board's authorizing authority and approach is a little bit different from our authorizing ordinance. And I think we're not going to be able to just take it and run.
Absolutely.
So that's just a pin for future.
Yep, and that's the intent.
Okay.
And you know, any more discussion on this? The one thing that I think we should add to this is that, so it says indemnification and reimbursement of the OCCB for improperly used OCCB funds or title issues or defects. Comma, perpetual monitoring and enforcement. I'll make that motion. Would anybody second that? You want me to read the whole thing again?
No, if you're going, because you have a motion and a second on the floor, you have to amend that motion.
Okay,
We didn't have a vote, but you just have to amend that motion
okay,
to add
okay.
whatever it is. So, yeah, if you.
I thought that's what he did, and I was seconding that amendment.
So
That
that's what
motion
I'm
to
doing.
amend.
I'm moving to amend it. And we got a second on that?
Yeah.
Okay. So all that I read up to where it says improperly used OCCB funds, it'd be comma, or title issues or defects, comma. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? Did you get that clearly, what that motion, amended motion was, Katie?
Okay, now we have to vote on the motion.
Yeah.
That was the vote on, we just voted to amend your original motion. So now we have to vote on the
Okay. Any
original
discussion
motion.
about that whole shebang? All in favor of the entire motion as amended?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you all. So now we're on sub 3, and the language would be, the eligible OCCB recipient shall submit the following documents to the board prior to closing the transaction, and the board and the county attorney or attorney designated by the county administrator on recommendation of the board shall review and approve the documents before OCCB funds can be dispersed. And then there'll be a list of those documents. I guess that should all go together. We didn't change that sub A, we changed sub B, and these are documents that would be reviewed. A final draft of the conservation easement and/or deed a final draft of the settlement statement, a final draft of the title insurance commitment and exceptions, and the grant agreement required pursuant to subsection 2-404C2. So that would be the new language for sub 3.
B.
Sub 3 and B. It's all one package there.
Can we get this online? That's a lot of paper.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, that's a lot of documentation,
Okay.
which is good for us to see, but, and when we need to see it, I'm just,
We won't be reviewing it. It will be the.
Okay, so do
it
we
will
have
be
a
an
motion?
attorney.
We have a motion on this?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
a second.
Okay, so discussion there.
Um,
So
I'm just-
yes, we could have this as electronically.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, we're usually
that-
getting like,
No, and that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But we won't be reviewing it as a board. It will be an attorney reviewing it on our behalf. But I'm sure that they will want it electronically.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so one of the problems is that we had the requirement to review certain things, but there was nothing in the ordinance saying who would review that.
okay.
I can review it as an attorney.
Yeah, but
But we're not always going to have an attorney on the board,
Yeah.
potentially.
Yeah.
So it's not appropriate for the board to
Yeah.
review that, so it's like, well, who's going to review it?
Yeah.
Our natural thought was the county attorney, and I talked to David Root about that, and he said, well, I don't know if I want to review that either. You know, so if he doesn't, or it doesn't fit within his skill level or purview or time schedule, there's going to be, somebody's got to review
The
it.
attorney needs to look at it.
Right, so it gives also the opportunity for the county administrator to pick an attorney to review these.
Sounds
And so this does give us the review of the conservation easement, at least draft, or the deed, if
Yeah.
it's not gonna be a conservation easement, before it happens.
I would
Which I
like to see
think
the
is
conservation
important.
easement. I could care less about the title insurance. I mean, I would
Yeah,
assume the
exactly.
attorney could do
Right.
that, but.
But I think for us, I think it's important that we do that we know what the legal parameters are gonna be for what we're giving the money to.
Yeah.
Which we don't know.
They're all
now.
different.
So I'll put a pin in that maybe we want to look at a policy that requires that the board members get access to the actual conservation easement. And then,
Before signing off.
and so, okay, I'll do that.
Okay. Any more discussion on this recommended amendment to the ordinance? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. So now we're in same section, sub C, adding a sub 6. No later than 60 days after the date of closing, the OCCB grant recipient shall submit a report to the board describing how the OCCB grant funds were distributed or used and the status of the project, period. The report shall include supporting documentation such as the closing settlement statement, disbursement statement, and the recorded conservation easement or deed, period. Do we have a motion on that language?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that?
Why was this added? Just, what was the reason?
So we
for
want,
adding
so
this?
we have requirements for how the funds are gonna be used. We just want something, just send us a letter with a settlement statement showing how the funds were dispersed. So we can check it off in our minds that, oh, okay, it was spent how it's supposed to be spent, or at least dispersed. How it was supposed to be dispersed as part of the closing.
So the grant recipient, if it's the owner of a farm, is it them submitting it, or is it somebody, like soil and conservation? Yeah, is it,
Well,
The grant recipients are gonna generally be entities like Oconee Soil and Water Conservation District, Upstate Forever, or the
Okay, so-
Natureland Trust, et cetera, so they would be the ones submitting that to
Okay.
us.
okay,
And, as a closing attorney, at closing, you could say to the law firm that's closing it, say, okay, we need copies of this sent to the OCCB.
Well,
And by
say-
definition, it's not going to be an individual. It's going to be Oconee County, a municipality, an independent agency or commission of the county, a not-for-profit charitable corporation, a federal, state, or local agency. That by definition, those are the only people who can receive grant dollars.
got it.
And so that grant recipient will either be getting a grant for a conservation easement or owning it outright, but that will still be, one of those entities that Emily just mentioned.
Well, I suggest we insert a grant recipient or person designated by him or entity.
Any discussion on that? I would say, let's just leave it on the grant recipient. We just gave them a bunch of money. You know, if they want to send it on, somebody writes it on behalf of them, we can decide at that time whether to accept it or not.
Okay.
Eddie, did you have a comment? No? Okay.
Not really. I mean, we do have to, I guess I better go to the.
Get on up there.
We have to submit those type of documents to the state bank. So I think that you're in the right by asking that you get a copy of those when it's closed.
Okay.
It's just a good opportunity to know where your money went and that it was dispersed as it was represented.
Okay,
Thanks, Eddie.
thank you.
Any further discussion on that proposed language? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now we're in section 2-405. We are in sub C. I'm going to read the language. Let's see, okay. Closing costs shall include recording fees, deed transfer, or documentary stamp fees, the cost of performing the work and providing the documentation required under subsection 2-404C3, attorney's fees, and the cost of obtaining surveys or an updated market analysis pursuant to subsection 2-404B6, period. Next sentence, the board shall have the discretion to allow the OCCB funds to be used solely for closing cost after considering the amount of the award, the value of the project, the amount of the closing costs, or other factors, period. In the event that OCCB determines that OCCB funds were spent for purposes other than those listed in this subsection or the grant agreement, the eligible OCCB recipient or property owner shall reimburse the OCCB in the amount of the improperly used funds, period. Do we have a motion on that language?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Reason for adding this or changing it?
Okay, so the first reason was that the language really says, or it currently says, and just reading through it and you're going through their fourth line, and the cost of obtaining, but in no event shall be more than dollars blank in closing costs paid for award. So there was, in our ordinance, there was a dollar bill sign with a blank with no number.
Okay.
There should be a number in there. So, I mean, because it doesn't mean anything without a number. And so we addressed that, and this is what we came up with. And the idea was that we could, if somebody told us, we just want 10% of this conservation value to be spent purely on closing cost, we could say, that's fine, considering everything, or not. So it's given us that latitude. We already have our own parameter for how much we can fund. And we're saying that we know that's 10% of the conservation value. And we're saying that it can be used purely for closing costs, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Anything else from the committee on that?
And it just occurred to me that we're saying that they would have to reimburse the amount of the grant. But what if we did not discover, or the board did not discover for 2 years or 10 years that the funds were improperly used? Would we want to get interest? Just popped in my brain. And would it be appropriate?
That's kind of a dicey area.
What?
I said, it's kind of I mean, Andy, you're the attorney.
Yeah, we could say that.
I mean, other
I mean, it's commonly done
IRS does.
in similar situations.
Like we want to be. But,
So basically, what you want to just add plus interest if appropriate.
well, I'll make a motion, and if it doesn't get a second, then it can die. But I will move to amend so that it says the amount of the improperly used funds plus interest. I want to make it discretionary. Plus
Well,
interest.
it says the board shall have the discretion to
Yeah,
start with.
okay, plus interest. Thank you. That does it. So that is my,
I'll second your amendment.
okay.
So, any discussion on that amendment? All in favor of that amendment?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so now back on the table is all this language with the amendment. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now, sub D. We are proposing to add a sentence to the end of sub D, which says, in the event that there is a mortgage on any property interest protected through the use of OCCB funds, the eligible OCCB recipient and property owner, if any, shall notify and inform the mortgagee or debt holder that the mortgage will be subordinate to the conservation easement or conservation provisions in the deed, period. The eligible OCCB recipient shall copy the OCCB on the notice and information to the mortgagee. All we're trying to do here in this is,
So moved.
second?
I'll second.
So what we're trying to do here is just ensure that we don't get hung up in this process because there's a mortgage on the property, and the way to avoid getting hung up on it is that there's a requirement that the lender, the mortgage holder, is informed that there is going to be a new legal document and control that affects the property that they hold a mortgage on.
They would have to be subordinate to the.
The conservation easement will require them, that's an IRS requirement, that it is subordinate, that any mortgage is subordinate to the.
So if someone has a conventional loan on a house and 150 acres,
And some mortgage companies will not. They may have a provision that says it can't be subordinate, and they will not agree to subordination. And so, I was the one that raised this because originally I had said, I want them to tell us that they agree to it. And that is unrealistic, but at least this way, we know that they are informed about it. And if they don't have a problem with it, then that's no problem. But if there's gonna be a problem, we want the landowner and the mortgage company to duke it out before they get money from us.
So on one hand, you got the IRS requiring that the mortgage is subordinate to it so that it
Yes.
runs with the land. And then the other, that a mortgagee might say, well, I know you're lowering the value of the property, we're not
Yeah.
letting you do that. So we
Yeah.
circumvent that problem
Yeah.
by requiring that their notice be given.
gotcha.
Yeah.
That's all that does. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Next is sub E, where we are changing, that whole big sentence. Katie, have I got to read that whole big sentence? I'll do it. The owner of the fee simple title to property upon which a conservation easement was purchased with OCCB funds, whether the original owner that conveyed the conservation easement or a successor in interest may reacquire and thereby terminate or extinguish that conservation easement, whether in whole or in part, only by complying with all of the following. Sub 1, proving that the original conservation and or historic values of the protected land have been lost or substantially impaired by factors beyond the owner's control. 2, obtaining unanimous approval by the OCC Board. 3, obtaining unanimous approval by County Council. 4, obtaining approval by Oconee County Court of Common Pleas. And 5, making payment in cash to the OCCB fund of whichever is higher of the original fair market value or the current fair market value of the conservation easement as determined by a certified appraisal paid for by the owner of fee simple title to the property, period. So this is what happens.
So moved.
Okay, right.
Second.
Discussion on this. Anybody have any questions about this?
Why did you put the fair market value or the current fair market value of the conservation easement?
It's the original or the current.
So if it went down in value, we don't want to be reimbursed with less money than we gave out. So it would default to being that original fair market value. And if it rises, it would default to that current higher value. And this is, we're talking about extinguishing a conservation easement, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Any more discussion on this?
So it would always be the higher value?
That
If
is,
Yes.
that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
What if the board approves a lower value?
We couldn't, because the ordinance requires, that's what this would do, is if you're going to extinguish and get rid of the conservation easement completely, then we get, the board gets
Higher.
the higher of either the original or the current value.
Okay.
You know, if, that's just, if you want to back out on your agreement, tough. That's what you got to pay to get it.
And so the logic too is that, okay, if there's some reason to kill this conservation easement, and there's a new appraisal value, and it has higher value, they've got to pay that higher value, but that higher value still exists. They would be able to sell that property for that higher value. So in a sense, there's no loss to them by that requirement.
And the idea behind it is the board is getting the money because there was a 500-acre forest that was used for recreation. And the county's no longer going to have that. So we get the money so that we can go spend it, and hopefully, we can't get anything exactly that piece of property. Nothing will be that beautiful or spectacular, but we can at least try to replace that 500 acres by spending it. And so that's the reason that if they're going to extinguish the conservation easement and do something different with the property, which it's very unusual because it's hard to do, and one of the many steps that makes it difficult is that you have to pay back the value of the land, either originally or currently, whichever is higher. So that's the idea behind it, is the board's got to get enough money to make itself whole, make the county whole.
And so what we are proposing to change in this, the current language is that they've got to pay the current fair market value of the conservation easement. And we're saying, oh, no, hold on now. If it really decreased in value, we don't want to get back less money than we gave you.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what
makes
we're trying to
sense.
change.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, so the next one is an F. If an eligible OCCB recipient acquires fee simple title to land for conservation and/or historic purposes with OCCB funds, that land may not be sold, transferred, assigned, alienated, or converted to a use other than the use set forth in the grant award except by complying with all of the following. 1, proving that the original conservation and/or historic values of the protected land have been lost or substantially impaired by factors beyond the owner's control. 2, obtaining unanimous approval by the OCC Board. 3, obtaining unanimous approval by County Council. 4, obtaining approval by the Oconee County Court of Common Pleas, and 5, making a payment in cash to the OCCB fund of whichever is higher of the original fair market value or the current fair market value of the protected land as determined by a certified appraisal paid for by the eligible OCCB recipient, period. So the first one we did just a minute ago dealt with.
So moved.
Oh, yes, right.
Second.
Right, okay.
Go ahead.
Discussion. So the first one dealt with where there's a conservation easement. This one's dealing where there was a fee simple title going to the Oconee Soil and Water Conservation District or whoever. Same concepts.
Okay.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, so now we've added several sections to this section, starting with H. The eligible OCCB recipient or property owner shall notify the board in the event that a claim against the title to the property has been made, period. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. In the event that the title to the protected property interest is invalidated or otherwise found to be deficient, the board shall be reimbursed by the eligible OCCB recipient and/or owner in the amount up to the amount of the award approved by county council and dispersed to the eligible OCCB recipient, period. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right. J, the eligible OCCB recipient or its successors and assigns shall submit annual reports to the board which describe how the property interest acquired with OCCB funds is continuing to satisfy or meet the criteria for protection provided in the ordinance, or how the property interest does not satisfy or meet said criteria and the plans to bring the project into compliance with the ordinance. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
Let's see.
So my question is, anybody who gets an award from us, a grant, has to do an annual report?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Who's going to review those annual reports? We could have a lot of them.
The board or who we designate to.
Is that something the state does?
Good
It
question.
should.
Okay.
Well,
We're not required.
So I would like for, how about, Eddie, would you give us some feedback on this, please?
Okay.
If you would.
If I could ask a question, where was the idea brought forward for that?
Okay,
It'll better help me answer the question.
I guess it was just so we would know if there's a problem, really.
All right. We
Go
have
ahead.
not had any negative aspects, on any of the easements that we own.
Right.
We do an annual report, or not an annual report, but an annual inspection every year. We go out, we make sure that everything is in compliance at that point. If we were to ever come up against a problem, and it looked like we weren't going to get it taken care of, at that point, we would then have to start discussions with the people that have funded us.
Okay,
So I guess that's where we've always been,
okay.
as opposed to being,
And I like that, that makes sense.
So is this provision really needed, that an annual report be given on all of them?
I wouldn't think so. I
So
mean,
what's
from my
needed in
standpoint,
your-
that's gonna put me in
Yeah.
to doing 25 or 30 every year.
Well, let's just say it lasts for 2,500 years. You gotta do 2,500 reports.
Yeah.
I think, I'm trying to recall, but I think that this may have come out of our discussion that we were concerned with the deeds, because we've made a number of changes that address that concern, that for those properties where the eligible recipient, where there is not a conservation easement, because conservation easements all require annual monitoring. And
Okay.
so that's not an issue. And I thought that we had put something in
It is, it
that
is.
if there was a
It is,
deed,
it
the
is.
county would
And we did, that's the next one.
Okay, so we may not need the report if we're addressing, because that was really the fundamental issue, is, I think.
I've got a solution.
Okay,
Okay, so we can deal with this in the grant agreement.
okay,
Doesn't have to be in the ordinance. I think the annual reports, you
Okay.
know, out of line. And, the one thing that, that we are worried about is that if it's a deeded situation, there's provisions in the deed, there's no monitoring entity.
yeah,
So how do we know if it, you know, if something weird has happened or hadn't happened? There's a fly-by-night nonprofit that gets these things and all of a sudden they've started developing or whatever. Who has the power of enforcement in that situation? How do we know? And so our next section actually dealt with the idea of having something, ordinance that says the county administrator, or the county's got to monitor these things. If the county, you know, there's no other entity to monitor these if it's owned outright, correct?
That's correct.
There's
I mean,
no,
If it's a fee simple and it's attached to the deed, then if nobody's looking at that,
Yeah.
Somebody
Yeah.
that wants to do ill could do ill.
in 75 years, we don't know how it might get sold.
See, that's another issue.
Yeah,
okay, so,
If a parcel's sold, that person may not be informed that there was these deed restrictions on it if it's not attached to that deed in some way. Previous deeds have not had those attachments.
which,
Right. So
which
as-
we
as
now
a
require
requirement-
that.
As a requirement, that is a good move.
so let's, okay, all right, we're discussing this on this motion.
Amazing
On just J.
that it was like.
Yeah.
Just Jay.
Let's vote on J, because I think.
That's right.
I think we.
So basically what we're saying with J is we don't need it.
That's
It's too much
correct.
work and it's not needed.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Okay.
Didn't Eddie say that his ordinance or whatever regulating authority requires that you inspect properties once a year?
That's correct.
And the conservation easement will say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's gonna be
Yeah.
bona fide part of it.
Conservation will say that, yes.
Right.
Yeah,
But having to do the annual report,
We don't want
We
to
don't-
require them to do that.
right, so let's
Okay.
vote on it.
all right.
Okay, so let's vote on J. All in favor, say aye.
Wait. I thought we're.
You can vote
Okay,
aye.
that's fine, that's fine.
I-
All opposed,
I'm-
No.
same sign.
Aye.
Aye.
Do you want to tell Katie how you voted?
I do not think we need to have an
Okay.
annual report filed. I thought that was what we were.
Yeah. We were
Well, the
voting-
motion
we were
was
voting
actually
down
for.
this.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the motion that got.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so the last of these, and I appreciate everybody's patience in working through these. This will now be a J, a proposed J, which says, in the event that there is no conservation easement on property funded by the OCCB, the county administrator shall be responsible for ensuring that the owner or the property complies with the ordinance and for enforcing the provisions of the ordinance, period. The grant agreement shall specify that the county shall be able to access the property for monitoring and/or enforcement purposes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
I have a problem with J, in the event that there is no current conservation easement on a property funded by the OCCB board, the county administrator shall be responsible for ensuring that the owner or the property complies with the ordinance.
What's the problem?
In the event that there is no conservation easement on a property funded by the
Okay, so we award grants for conservation easements to be put on it or for fee simple purchase, where there is no conservation easement.
So
But
this,
there's deed restrictions that ensure the conservation of the property. We're dealing with that situation.
so should we insert into that it is for the fee simple title and not the conservation easement? Should that be
Well, I
added in
think-
or?
We could, it goes without saying, because the only other way we can fund besides conservation easement is for a fee simple purpose. But
And we have awarded one grant to Natural Land Trust where they often, if we're awarding for fee simple, there's also going to be a conservation
Right.
easement. But since I've been on the board, we've awarded once where Natural Land Trust said they were going to retain ownership, and we're not planning to put a conservation easement on it. And that's what kind of raised it in my mind, because they're great, but in 75 years. That's
Right.
always
Right.
my thing is.
Okay.
So we're dealing with, we could have pure conservation easement, funded that. We could have a fee simple purchase, and there's a conservation easement, and we funded that. The situation we're trying to get is when there's a fee simple purchase and there is no conservation easement.
Yeah.
So-
Or complies with the fee simple ordinance? And for requiring.
Yeah, it's got to continue to comply with this ordinance and what was approved. Do we have a motion on this? Did we move on this in a second?
Motion in a second, we can-
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good. Any other discussion on this, the new J? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you all.
Can I, just as a housekeeping issue?
Go ahead. Yep.
For the sake of the minutes, would it be possible for you to give Katie the clean copy as passed, not as passed by council, but so that she can just say a motion on section blah, 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 and then attach and not have to type all of the amendments? Do you understand what I'm
Well, I
saying?
think the county needs.
Well,
She could say that there was a motion on section 2.404A6.
well, here's what I want to happen,
Okay.
is that we've done what we did today. David Root and I are going to get together to get the language in the form that he needs to have it, because it's going to go from Katie to David Root. David Root will give it to county council. That's where I'm going to get with David Root on making sure that he gives them the language that we want.
That's fine. I was just trying to make it easier, but Katie shook her head and said, don't even bother about it.
Because y'all made motions, I have to put all those in the minutes.
Yeah, I just didn't know
I appreciate it, but.
if you
yeah,
could
I
not
appreciate
have
that,
to
but no.
type all of the
Yeah.
wording. If you could
And I'll
just
help you
type
do
the
whatever
section.
you need to do.
It's
You
fine.
know I'll help you.
It's not a problem, I promise.
Okay, very good.
It's her
Okay.
job.
Okay, all right, so now we're moving on to unfinished old business. I don't have anything on my list for that.
Did you get the letter out to Duke?
Nope. And we decided, I believe, that, we've got a cycle for when we give letters to Duke. And which letter are you talking about?
My letter,
What is your letter?
letter requesting funds.
Oh, no, we're not ready to request funds yet from Duke. We want more time and track record before we go to
Why?
Duke. So we'll have a track record and we'll show the need. I mean, we're still got,
$500,000.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's too early to ask for funds from Duke.
Yeah, they're gonna say, what do you
Yeah.
need it for? You have $500,000.
That's right.
Yeah.
We got to spend some money.
Yeah.
Serious
Give us
money.
5 million.
It's not enough. Any more old business? Okay, new business, we all have a statement of interest, telling us that, Upstate Forever is going to come with an application, and I believe on this approaching grant cycle. And, we take action on statements of interest, don't we?
Yes, this is just to approve, if you want to have a full application, that's what
Yeah.
this is for.
Okay, so I move that we tell Upstate Forever, send us an application.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, there we go. So we'll have some work cut out for us, at least one in April. I don't think I have anything else in my mind for new business. But I think Mr. Martin's been patiently waiting to talk to us about new business or whatever. And Eddie, I'm sorry, we don't have a public, we probably should have a public comment period early.
I was just here as an observer today, basically, but
Okay.
if I am permitted one quick comment, I can do that.
Yes, sir.
I would like to place an application in with you guys for the Lyle property that I stated earlier. I'm not sure that I knew that we had this statement of interest as a requirement.
It's in the ordinance that we do.
Okay.
We have in the past let an applicant send an application with the
Okay.
statement of interest on top of that.
Okay.
But we would prefer to get the statement of interest first, and it's really for your benefit, so we could say, no, not a good idea, don't
Right.
waste money on the application.
Yeah.
But in my mind, from reading the ordinance, it's not a stopper
Okay.
that we didn't get it beforehand.
Okay. That's-
Because I understand that you probably want to submit it April 1st.
I would like to, yes, but I didn't know my time frame until I really did not expect things to go as well at the South Carolina Conservation
That's
Bank as
great.
they did.
It's great that it did.
So we've got to move on this now while we've got that funding in place. So that's why I'm a little bit late getting started on it for you guys.
Where is this property at?
It's between Westminster and Walhalla, right out here. It's about 200 acres from the National Forest. There's landowners in between. And I presented this piece of property as a trigger property to the South Carolina Conservation Bank, because if we can get this one funded, that corridor that leads to the National Forest, those people may see the benefit of doing so. There's a 300-acre tract, a 60-acre tract, and a 130-acre tract in between this. And then it's very close to another parcel that's 700 acres that Upstate Forever already holds a conservation easement on. So we can make a good footprint there if we can get started.
Good, we look forward to seeing that.
So this is a different Lyle property?
Yes.
Same person, but,
No,
no, a different person?
different person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, different family.
I have an unrelated question.
All right.
I had made a note to myself that I thought at the September meeting that you said something about the Elaine Morris property had been abandoned, that it wasn't, you had asked, y'all had received a grant.
The Moore property, you mean?
My note says Elaine Morris. This is why
You mean the property we approved already?
So it would be Peggy Morris probably who it was supposed to be. And I wrote Elaine Morris because that was on the line up above it in my
Yes,
notes.
correct.
So, so is that correct that it has
That is
been?
incorrect.
That has not been abandoned?
That has not been abandoned.
Okay.
We're still in process of that. What we are in a slowdown for that because we did not know. I was approached by the NRCS easement representative, and he told me not to allow anybody that we've got any applications in with them to spend any more money right at this moment until they get their funding supplied by the Farm Bill. So that's why I'm in a slowdown process, but we still are within the window of making that happen as soon as we know what funding they have, and then we can put in an application on her behalf with the state.
Okay, so this is one that we have not approved, the board? I mean, this all predates my service on the board. I'm just trying to get my brain right.
You did
Did the
approve it.
board approve it?
Yeah, we did
Yes,
this past
it is
October.
approved, yes.
Okay,
The
so.
Peggy Moore.
Oh, it was.
It's the 34 acres.
It was the one I missed the meeting, sorry.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, so this is, so you are, I think it is 6 months, and then you have to ask for an extension, and you
Right,
can
no.
get up to a year.
No, it's just the opposite. So from the date that the recipient accepts the
Yes.
award, which was in December,
In
they
December.
have a
Okay.
year to close, and we can give them 6 more
Okay.
months
Right.
after that
Okay,
Right.
so you accepted in December?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
for Peggy Moore,
Yeah,
34 acres.
Peggy Moore. Okay, thank you, that,
Good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Eddie.
okay, thanks.
We're at number 9.
So,
Go ahead.
I know this is really kind of old business and we're at new business,
understand.
but the Elaine Morris, I've got, did they ever cash that check or pick it up?
Katie? Did they ever cash the Elaine Morris check for $12,500?
500?
Has that ever been processed?
No, because
Yeah, what's going on with that?
okay, so I had sent a check to them, but then it was voided. And I had,
Who voided it?
Why?
I did,
Okay.
because I was asked to by the,
It's probably over 90 days old by the treasurer.
this was done in 2018,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So the check was voided due to the closing not being completed. And I have a note here that says that I will reissue a new check when easement is completed. I still have not received anything. I actually called, I think it was Scott Park, I believe,
Oh, so
was
it's
on this.
Upstate Forever's the recipient.
I called him yesterday, left him a message, and it was like yesterday afternoon. So within this meeting being at 9 o'clock this morning, he may have called and left a message, and
Okay.
obviously I've not been in my office, so, I wanted to know what was going on with it too, so, but that's the only one that we are lacking of the 12.5. Like I said, that was done back in 2018.
So
that
they're
was-
outside their,
Yeah, they
closing
can't
window.
close at this point.
I had an email from, and I can't find it right now, unfortunately. But I did have an email from the attorney's office telling me to void it out, and so that's why I did that.
The county attorney?
No, the attorney.
private attorney.
Private, okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like,
It sounds like it's been abandoned.
well, it sounds like we need to communicate with Upstate Forever about this because they're outside the parameters of the ordinance.
Right, but remember, it was approved for this grant, so I don't know what would happen at this point. Because it
Well,
was
we need to
approved.
take action on whether or not we can
Right,
still fund this
right.
because it's outside the window.
I don't know, I was just saying that was back in, and I can go back and look in the minutes and see when it was actually approved. But it would have been, the check was written,
I've got to go.
Okay.
February of 2018.
On what?
February of 2018 is what I have, and then I have the note saying to avoid it in November of 2018. So it had been that long time span that they had not cashed the check.
Do you have a letter from them saying they accept the award like they're?
I don't have it on me right now. I don't know where it's at, but I do, and I know I have it.
Could
but-
you send me a copy of that?
Yes.
And would the board like for me to talk to Upstate Forever about this?
Yes.
Sure, sure, go ahead.
Okay.
Because we need to officially indicate that it's abandoned or he needs to renew the application.
Well, we need to deal with it one way or another.
Yeah, and I'm thinking in terms of the report we have to submit to county council, we have to tell them whether or not we have the funding for what we've got. And one of the things in the last report was I said, we have X amount in the bank, but we have X amount outstanding approved awards. And so we need to get it off our balance sheet, so to speak, as an approved award, because that's money that, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, or
Yeah.
get it spent
Yeah.
through whatever machinations
yeah.
we need to do.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying, we need to, so yeah, if you'll talk to,
So do we need a motion for me to do that or just,
I'll make a motion for you to talk to Upstate Forever about the Elaine Morris.
we have a second on that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Chairman, I actually just found it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I found what I was looking for.
Uh-huh.
This was dated on November the 28th of 2018, and it was from Ann Sullivan, was the attorney.
I got
in
you.
Seneca.
I just want to get a copy of that.
Yes, I will give you a copy of the email, and I also have the check and then with it being voided as well.
Okay.
I'll get you both of those.
So they're still within their window, but we have to give them the 6-month window. Their window closed on 11/28/2019.
And they have to request
Okay, and
the
we could,
additional 6
I
months.
understand, and we could
So,
grant that, so
we
they
could grant
actually
it
have
if they
till May of
request it.
this year
Yeah.
to do it. Okay,
Yeah, we could,
Okay.
We could send them a letter
well, I'll talk to them.
saying, you have to close by a different.
wait a second,
by name.
February of 2018?
11/28/2018, so that goes to 11/28/2019.
That's when the check was voided.
No, I thought you said that's when
It
the
was
letter
in
came.
November.
Didn't you just tell us? that-
I wrote the check on February
February.
of 2018 and had 2 signatures on it.
Okay,
I sent the check out in February of 2018.
Uh-huh.
I sent an email saying to void the check November of 2018 because
Oh,
they were not
okay.
done with their closing.
what I need
And
to
this
know
was
is.
a whole different board too.
Right, I understand.
So-
What I need to know is when their acceptance of the award letter
I don't
was,
think we were doing it like that.
even though the ordinance required it. We didn't.
Well,
Okay, I got you. Okay.
but we know county council voted prior to February of 2018.
I'm sure
Because-
they.
Okay, I'll take
Otherwise,
care
the
of it.
check would not have been written.
Correct.
Yep.
And I can look and see when county council approved it.
Right, and then they had 4 months after that to accept it, the recipient did. And that's when the year starts running, is after that acceptance by the ordinance. So that's what,
Okay.
that's our time period control. That's why I need that letter if it exists. So I'll talk to Ann Sullivan about it and see if there ever was a
I'll
letter.
get you the email.
Okay, all right.
Just for housekeeping, the old ordinance applies.
Oh, yes, until the county council goes through its public hearing process for adopting amendments. That's correct. That's correct.
And do you have to go present to them, or does it automatically go?
David will present it to them,
David,
Root, the county attorney.
okay.
And we'll probably, I'll up here and speak about these if they want.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are at number 9 on the agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So adjourned.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.